Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm David Nilsson. I'm your host. The goal of the Future is Borderless podcast is to connect with business leaders from around the world who have what I refer to as a borderless mindset. And I'm looking to share new ideas, new innovations, best practices, things that we can put to work in our personal and professional life that should help us lead and grow in a rapidly changing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by Doxa Talent. Doxa helps business leaders to find full-time, dedicated, highly skilled workers from the Philippines. And this includes roles like accountants, executive assistants, sales development reps, software engineers, and many, many more. And as a result of building an offshore capability, companies can scale faster, increase margin, and improve culture. And to learn more about Doxa, you can visit doxatalent.com. All right, on for our show. Well, Marc Rousso is affectionately known by his team as Captain Vision. And along with his college roommate, he created a national award-winning luxury custom home building company out of the Seattle area called J. Marc Homes. And at J. Marc, employees are encouraged to do what they say, love where you work, and customers are invited to love where you live. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in recognition of all the awesome work that they've done, J. Marc received a national housing quality award from the Professional Builders magazine in 2019. And this was the first time a Seattle home builder had done that in the 25-year competition's history. He's also really dedicated to his personal development, having graduated from UW, taken courses at MIT, and now I believe is enrolled in a 9-year program at Harvard University. He's also has a rising career as a DJ and does this all while balancing his own personal and family life, which he enjoys with his wife and 2 daughters. So Marc, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. And man, that was a great intro. I mean, I'm going to take you on the road with me.
Oh, I'm happy to do it anytime. But you know, it's funny, as I was reading through this, I was actually getting really excited for this conversation because I realized we have a lot in common. First,
sure.
I started my career in real estate development, so we have that real estate connection. You have a wife and 2 daughters, as do I. Mine are a little bit younger.
My son would get upset at you that there's 2 daughters. I have a son and a daughter. My son's Lee and daughter Sienna, 14.
Well, then I must have read that wrong. So I guess we don't have that as much, that part.
We don't have that in common, but it's okay. We have 2 kids in common.
We'll go with that. But I love, by the way.
We're like twinning right now. We're like, with the blue shirts, it's like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You guys can all fill in the gaps and decide who is who. But I loved actually reading also that you invest a lot in your own personal development, and the fact that you're now, successful business owner. You've got this outstanding sort of career budding and as a DJ, and yet you're still investing in your own education. So I loved hearing about all of that.
I would say the DJ is a hobby rather than a career, but it's been a fun hobby.
Well, it must be a lot of fun because I actually went onto Instagram and saw on your handle there some of the shows that you've done, and there's some pretty cool places that you've had a chance to play. And it seems like a little bit more than just a hobby.
It's a hobby, like golf is for some people. People get passionate about, going to play golf, and they're gone for 4 hours a day. And anyway, but we could talk about that later on for sure.
All right. Well, let's do this. Let's talk about at least give people some context for where you've been and how you've kind of gotten to this place here. So, when I was reading your bio, I talked about the fact that you had started your business, J. Marc Homes, with your college roommate. Tell me a little bit about how that sort of all came together and where the idea came from, and why you guys thought you were qualified to start a home building business.
Well, I'll do a little backstory. Jay and I have been business partners for, it will be 32 years come November. So we started when we were in college at the University of Washington, and our first business is we were DJs at parties and clubs all around Seattle during our college career, and we did that for about 5 years. It was an amazing time. We learned tons. We learned so much about being an entrepreneur, customer service, sales, and kind of how we each work. I've always been the front runner the front man, and he's been behind the scenes getting stuff done. And carry forward for 32 years. It's exactly the way that, in different capacities, it's the way it is now. And I respect him for what it is he does, and he respects me for my role. And we went from DJing. We sold that business for $15,000 and started buying rental properties throughout Seattle. And then by the time we were 30, we had about 35 rental houses. And that was kind of like our hobby. We both had full-time jobs. He was in furniture sales at his family's furniture business, and I sold real estate. But like what I loved doing was just building a business and building the rental side of the business. And then one of those pieces of properties had a little bit of land, and we created a short plat out of it, and we learned the short plat process. So we did a 2-lot short plat, then we did a 3-lot short plat, and then we bought the property across the street and did a 4-lot short plat. And then soon later we had 15 lots under development, and this was in 2007. And we became full-fledged, this was in 2001, and we became full-fledged land developers. And we quickly got up to a couple hundred lots that we were developing all throughout the Seattle suburbs. And that was our business. And we were really good at it because we fostered relationships with the people who owned land, and we went above and beyond to kind of do that. And so that's kind of the story of the start of the start of our real estate business up until the recession.
Yeah, that's amazing. And 32 years with the same partner.
32 years with both Jay and I, and it is like it's kind of like a marriage. It's kind of like a big brother, little brother at times. Sometimes we love each other. Sometimes we hate each other. I will tell you that. During spoiler alert, during 2007, 8, and 9, we lost it all, and that was our the worst time for us as in business partners. And yet it was probably so when we made money in 2007, we were kind of at odds a little bit. I would say that my ego got in the way of our relationship because we were making a lot of money, and what I kind of going through the downturn, it humbled me, and provided a great sense of humility. And we kind of from the downturn, we became closer together. We were working in his basement trying to figure shit out. We had to liquidate all of our rental properties just to satisfy the banks that were coming after us. And we had nothing, we didn't have anything else. Our backs were against the wall, and all we had were each other and our belief that we were going to get through this. And instead of filing bankruptcy and whatnot, we liquidated all of our assets, and ended up with a $2.5 million of debt at 2010. We had banks that were, we ultimately negotiated with our bank that we would pay them back within 20 years. We didn't have a paycheck in 2010. And we said, hey, if you give us 20 years to pay you back that $2.5 million, we won't file bankruptcy. And so that we were fortunate because our name means something to us, hence Jay and Mark, and we didn't want to have bankruptcy on as a blemish on our record. So that time as business partners, we came together, we had each other's back, and we figured it out during the worst of times.
Yeah. It's good to hear that happened, because I think under crisis, partnerships, marriages, as you would call it, they're very similar actually, and sometimes the way that they work. Crisis can actually bring you together or tear you apart. And so I guess I'd love to hear in reflection of that experience. So anybody that was thinking hey, I've got a business partner right now, it's not perfect, or hey, I'm thinking about entering into a partnership. What are some of the things that, you would advise them? Just 2 or 3 sort of, lessons or pieces of wisdom that you've sort of accumulated over that time.
Appreciate each other's differences.
Mhm.
I think that you don't, and with that, um, go in partnership with someone that appreciate each other's difference, and be in business with somebody that doesn't have the same skill set as you. Two salespeople are not needed on the team. You need a grinder and you need a salesperson, or you need an accountant and a salesperson. But you need that analytic and the out in our experience, that's what has worked out best.
Yeah.
And so appreciate the differences and look for the differences.
Yeah, I would validate that. So my first business, Guidance Financial, is going on 20 years this year, and my
Wow.
business partner and I, he's my best friend. But we've definitely, like you, gone through some ups and downs, and the '08 crisis, being in the financial world and one that was helping with
Right.
real estate transactions. We had some tough times there too. But I would tell you that we always joke that we treat our business like a marriage, right? And that you have to constantly have date night and look out for each other's best interests and appreciate each other's differences. And so, I know that's a little bit uh, esoteric in terms of how you treat a business partnership, but I think the idea is, like, you guys are in it together, invest in that relationship and appreciate what each other brings to the table. But I'll also say I completely agree. If you both have the same skill set, not a lot gets done. So it's much more important to have people that complement. You talked about the '08 crisis. I was going to ask a little bit about that later, because being in the real estate world, I was curious sort of what happened there. You sort of skipped from, we were in crisis and then we negotiated with the banks, but like, what actually happened with your business or the strategy that has now allowed you to sort of, obviously the real estate market's been doing very well, but is the business different today than it was before 2008? And if so, how?
Yes, we were land developers. Merchant land developers means that we would buy raw land and we would take it through the municipalities and then provide builders with lots that they can develop, or sometimes that we would actually develop the lots and sell to home builders. During the 2000 and during that crisis, what the banks took back hundreds of thousands of lots all throughout the country, right? And in our market, like, we couldn't go be developers again, and we didn't have enough money to buy the land. It was generally the publicly traded builders to buy. So what we realized is that we had to start small, and instead of us being land developers, we looked to become home builders, and because that was our greatest way to start creating a paycheck for ourselves. Land development is it's not for the faint of heart. It's many years in the making. It's 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you outflow a ton of money before you end up getting anything back. And so we got caught, with, the value of those lots were about $50 million. And we owned several of those projects, outright with banks, and the banks banks came after us saying, hey, the value of this land is a lot less than what you paid for it, and you have to make up the difference. And we didn't have millions of dollars in cash, and what we did was we exchanged some property for the note, and we walked away with that much debt, that $2.5 million, so we pivoted during the worst. We pivoted from being developers to being home builders, because we always, when we developed land, we always envisioned what house was going to go on the lots. We just never physically built the properties. So when we could start buying, and we started, like, we were developing lots and projects that were 20, 30, 50 lots at a time. And when we restarted as home builders, we went and it was like ground zero. Okay, we're going to do a 5-lot project, and then another 5-lot project, and another 8-lot project. Just so we started, like, changing the momentum of, like, things were really tough to, like, okay, let me just get a single. Let me just bunt to get on base, and that was what we did when in starting our projects. And it's this the unfortunate part, or the fortunate part, is we didn't take a paycheck from 2008 to 2012. So it was almost 5 years before we took a paycheck. And we had 6 employees to help us build the houses and doing the finance and taking care of our customers and doing the interior design, and it was like we were creating a business, and we weren't taking a paycheck, but that's kind of what we needed to do in order to restart over again and start the right way.
It's funny. When I've done these interviews, I always tell people I want to get to the 5%, but I love how I don't even have to ask with you. You just sort of give it. It's awesome. Tell me about you said employees a minute ago. I want to talk about that for a second, because in your bio, you mentioned that you invite employees to love where you work, right? Where did that mantra come from, and what does that actually mean inside your business?
All right. Well, so the business that was Jay and I had before was J Mark Development, and there was about 6 of us in that business. And I could say, after 15 years of reflection, is that I had my leadership style was more egomaniacal in that business, and it cost me everything. It cost me all my money. And I realized that in order to have a new company, I needed to change as a leader, from that style to becoming a servant leader. And so fortunately along the way, like over the course of the last 15 years, 12 years, I have amazing mentors around me that have taught me all about servant leadership. Many of you know Warren Rustand. He's been my mentor for almost 9 years now. And he embodies that each and every day. And every time we talk, and anytime anyone comes up to him, it's like he is all about service. And I have another mentor, Howard Bihar, who was the president of Starbucks. And he's been my mentor and my first investor in JMark. He's been my mentor for almost 14 years, 15 years. And he was people first. It's not about the coffee, it's about the people. And both of those men have influenced me and changed me to being who I am today. And that then creates a love where you work environment, because it's all about love. It's all about caring. It's all about family. It's all about like doing the right thing each and every time. And it's not just it's in my company, but it is for every stakeholder, every person that comes in contact with JMark Homes, whether it's a subcontractor or a client or a banker or an investor. Like, there is never a time when we don't do the right thing. Never. Like, no one can come back and say, Mark, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. No, I will spend 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand and make sure that the problem is solved, so that everyone on our team knows that, like, this is who we are, this is what we do. And so that creates a culture where they love where they work. And we do tons of things around that. The first thing is everyone within 90 days of our of hire they read a book called Exceptional Service, Exceptional Profit. It's about the Ritz-Carlton customer service, and it's a great formulaic approach to customer service. And so it allows them to have the mindset of like entering into a company. I don't care what you have experienced with other home builders. This sets it apart. And this is who we are. And then they have to present. And for many grown adults, they have not given a speech or a presentation in front of the entire company ever. And so we get them changing that mindset to now they have to give sometimes it's a 5, 10, 15-minute presentation on what they learned. And some people have done skits, some people have done PowerPoint, some people have done their own creative way of what they learned. And so that gets their mindset of what the culture is like. Then the next thing that we do is we give adjectives. And I learned this from the company called Cranium, the game company.
Yeah.
The CEO, his title was the Grand Poobah. And no one took themselves so seriously that everyone had a name inside of the company, and it wasn't their VP of sales. It was whatever it may be. And so we do adjectives, and we come up, and everyone will say it out loud, hardworking, charismatic, funny, fun, cheerful, and so we spend several minutes on adjectives, and then we give names to each. Then we have a list of 30, 40, 50 names of who this person could be. So we will go through it, and one, you could go your entire career without hearing adjectives of what other people think of you. And so how great is it that within 90 days, you now have this amazing feeling of, I love it here because this is what other people think of me, right? And it's always spot on. And then the next iteration is people look forward to their names. They tell their wife, today is my naming day. And they can't wait for what their name, and it's and so my name is Captain Vision. Jay's name is Chief Do-A-Lot. Our land feasibility person, he's Professor of Dirt. Our VP of Marketing is Ms. Create-A-Lot. And so on and so our president, his name is the Sheriff. And so these names, everyone has a name. And if you go on jmarkholmes.com, you will click on my picture, and then you will see a pseudo picture of me as a pirate with a what are those telescope? Mm-hmm. And everyone has a pseudo picture of themselves, and they look, and then so it's they look forward to the adjectives, they look forward to their name, and then they look forward to their picture. And then they show their picture to their wife and their kids, and it is a crazy experience. So that's kind of setting the stage of loving where you work. But at the end of the day, it's all about how much can I love and how much can I care for my team in a very humbled, authentic, and transparent way. And when I led previously from an ego perspective, it was purely my own insecurities. Now I can truly, I told the story about Jay and I to my team. Many of them haven't heard it, and how we lost everything, and I cried. I shed a tear just talking about how I had to change as a leader because it didn't serve me well anymore. And I apologized to Jay in front of everybody, for who I was back then. And so I don't have to apologize anymore for crying in front of a company meeting, because that's just who I am. And I'm an emotional person. And I think that actually brings people together and makes them want to be a part of a company when the leader of the organization is fully transparent, fully emotional, and vested with each and every one.
It's funny that I agree. By the way, first, I love, as you were talking through that, I was thinking to myself, first you're indoctrinating them in principles that you believe in by having them read the book, but then by having them present it, you're not only helping to anchor in some of those beliefs, because when you teach, you obviously learn things a lot better, but you're also pushing them out of their comfort zone right out of the gates, which most people are not comfortable on in any sort of public speaking forum. And then I love the naming. I actually wondered when I saw Captain Vision where that actually came from. But I love the fact that you guys actually have naming parties around that kind of activity. That I can see why people would really enjoy that. Marc, you've a couple of times talked about your ego and sort of how that got in the way. And if I think back to my career, I started my first business when I was 23 years old in an industry I really didn't know a lot about, but I saw an interesting opportunity. Was dumb enough to know that I guess I didn't know that I shouldn't have been able to do it. Right. And I think that was helpful at the time, but I would say that I was probably one of those people that was driven by insecurities. And so, I was a little bit more what I would call a dictator than a leader at that point. But you've brought it up a couple of times. And so I'd love for you to, at what point were you able to sort of point the finger at yourself and realize what, maybe I'm part of the problem, or maybe I am the problem? Was there a moment where that sort of smacked you right in the face and sort of helped you wake up on that?
There's a lot of facets to that answer. One, when you lose it all, you really, it's a humbling experience, and it was my ego of trying to. Um, I wanted to get to 1,000 lots.
Mm.
Why 1,000 lots? Um, it was because I wanted to have a meaningful number to prove that I was somebody.
Yeah.
And taking it one layer further, in the onion peel, is that I wanted to prove to my dad that I was worthy of his love and that I was a successful entrepreneur. And like, I had 30 some rental properties. Jay and I, with one check of a sale of one of our development companies, we could have paid off every single one of our houses, and we could have been retired at 36. Retired, like collecting, each tens of thousands of dollars every single month, 36, 37 years old.
Yeah.
And yet it was like my drive to is to get it to 1,000 lots because we wanted to have a blank kind of business.
Yeah.
Now, when I look at J. Marc Homes, it is not about how many people I have. Like, it's not a benchmark for me. Oh, I got 50 people. No, it's just, I need 50 people because that's in order to provide the service and do the amount of houses that we're doing. It's what I have to have. The second part is I'm not like, oh, I need to get to 100,000, 100 million in sales. Man, if I get to 100 million in sales, it's going to be all organic, and it's all going to be because the business got it to that way. It's not like I'm shooting for 100 million. There's so many people so I learned my lesson of like, it's great to have goals. We all need to have them, but too many people make business decisions, like specifically myself, based on a number that is just a fictitious number, just because it sounds good or it looks good, or oh yeah, I'm going to get to 100 employees. Okay, well, great, but do you need all the 100 employees? Because you hear about too many businesses where like, yeah, I got you 100, but then I had to lay off 50 of them because business was not going well, and too many businesses, like, they fail because they grew too fast, and it's so the whole way that we operate JMark is that, like, we're in the cusp of having a recession. Like, whether people, like, it's coming. It is, and I will tell you, I have prepared for this recession for 12 years, and I know, I slept really well last night because I know because it's already been in my mind of like, okay, a recession's going to come. I don't want to lose it all. What do I need to do for the last X years in order to prepare me for today? So
yeah, it's funny. That resonates when the pandemic hit. Having gone through the '08 crisis, with the moment we saw that there was a outbreak in China, I turned to my business partner and said, look, if there's an outbreak there, it's already in Seattle. And of course, Kirkland was #1 spot, right? So right outside of Seattle. We were prepared, and no jobs were lost as a result of that. And certainly we saw some turmoil in the business because demand decreased almost instantly. But like you, we felt really prepared, and now I've been talking about this recession for a long period of time. I was actually going to ask you about this. As we're moving, we're in an inflationary environment. In order to curb that, the Fed's going to have to force a recession, right? That's just inevitably what he is starting to move towards right now. So I'm glad you brought that up. I want to talk a little bit about this hobby. And thank you, by the way, for correcting me. I should have said hobby, but your hobby around being a DJ, because you say hobby, but you did just open for Fatboy Slim and another top DJ, which unfortunately name is escaping me right now. Claptone, that's right. So that's real. And it was at a music festival, as I understand it. I'm not really a music guy per se, but as I understand it, that was one of the bigger festivals that you could have been playing at. So how did you go from being a home builder? And you said earlier you were a DJ when you were a little bit younger, 5 years ago. And now you're opening for some of the bigger names in the industry. How did that come about?
So I about I gave up DJing to become an entrepreneur. I didn't want to do it, but my one of my mentors, Saul, at the time said, how many millionaire DJs do you know in 1995? And I said, I don't know any. He's like, well, if you want to be a millionaire, you have, like real estate is your game. And I was like, okay. And so I sold it all, gave it all up, and for 20 years, I parked it. I listened to house music. I went to Ibiza, went to all these different places. I listened to it every single day. I'm a junkie. It's what fuels my fire. And every time I listen to a DJ mix, I'm like, God, I could do that. I want to do that. And so for 20 years, as I was building my business, I basically, let it go. And 7 years ago, I bought some equipment, just to dabble with it, and did a few charity functions, and just to like do fun stuff. Then 3 years ago, I was at an entrepreneur event, and I said, you know what? Like as I set goals for myself, crazy goals, and I said I want to DJ at clubs and festivals, and so I made that proclamation, 2019, that I want to DJ at clubs and festivals around the world. So for the last 3 years, I, like every entrepreneur that sets a goal and they kind of move towards accomplishing it. It's, we work really hard in order to make it happen, or that's what I've done. So I told somebody that, and they said, hey, I know the person who started Ultra, which is one of the biggest festivals. So I get introduced to him, and he asked me, hey, have you produced any of your own songs? And I was like, no, I haven't produced any of my own songs. He's like, well, do you have an Instagram or any social media following? I was like, no, I don't have any Instagram or social media following. He's like, well, do you have any mixes? And I was like, no, I don't have any mixes. He's like, well,
Not going very well, is it?
he's like, you want to DJ at one of the biggest festivals in the world. You might need to start working on that. And I felt so insignificant, so inadequate, that I was like, I want to work towards that. And I want to like then be able to like have all of those things. And so for 3 years, I went to DJ school in London, spent a week there learning how to DJ, and have then had a DJ instructor help me every other week for like an hour to 2 hours. And we like practice DJing. And I have now produced over 20 songs. My first producer that I worked with was out of Amsterdam, and we had several top 10 songs that were in that genre, and so that got me a foundation. And then I hired myself a manager, and to help me take the business to the next level. And all this is all during the pandemic, so no one was DJing anywhere. So I was DJing on my patio, doing Zoom sessions for my 50 friends that were wanting to like watch me, dance on my patio and DJ music that I was producing. And so I hired this manager, and he's like, okay, well, I want to help you create 3 songs that I think are going to be hits for you. And those 3 songs are going to propel you to like DJ at bigger clubs and festivals. And I was like, okay. So that relationship started January of last year. So we've been doing this for 15, 16 months. We've produced 3 songs. One song came out earlier this year. It made it to number 13 on the commercial pop chart in the United Kingdom. And, and this is music, the music industry. So I've had to learn a whole new industry. Music is marketing for anyone. So like you put out good music, then you go on tour, and where you make most of your money is basically on tour. So anyway, this gave me a little cachet. He has relationships with, I think success in life is all about relationships and treating people well. And, that's kind of like using success principles from being an entrepreneur. Is you got to grind, you got to work really hard, you got to like learn, you got to study, you got to, like nothing comes easy. Like it's the amount of work that I have put into just getting that 1 show or 2 shows has been insurmountable, like years in the making to finally get that one opportunity. And when I got that opportunity, I'll put it in perspective. The perspective is I got to open, in Miami Music Week, which was one of my goals. Um, the dance floor had 8 people on the dance floor when I started.
Ooh.
Okay. And it was like 6 of my buddies that flew from Seattle to come watch me. And by the time I was done, so my job was the fluffer. So my job was was to bring people from a pool that was like 300 yards away to the main stage. And I had to like do everything I could to bring those. And so by the time I was done, if you go on my Instagram account at DJ Marc, MarcRousso, you will see pictures of like the before and after. The before, there was 8. The after, there was like 400 to 500 people, and the line through the door. By the time Claptone and Fatboy Slim were DJing, there was 2,500 people in the stands. And so that was one of my most epic moments. The other one was I got to DJ in Aspen opening for Claptone. Claptone is a DJ, top 30 DJ in the world. He DJs for 10, 20, 50, 100,000 people, 100,000 person crowds. Like, he is a legit DJ. In Aspen, it's a 450 person club. And there were people that flew all around the world to come see Claptone in Aspen. Yeah. And it was like from Peru, Argentina, like everywhere. And so that was so amazing. The crowds were so excited to see Claptone, and I just was happy to be there and open for him. And so that has been my journey. It has been tons of hard work, being humble of like not needing to be the man, just opening for the man, fostering relationships with people, being nice and doing what I said I was going to do.
It's amazing. I love the fact that you did this when you were in college and are now sort of reactivating this hobby, and it's actually turning into something really exciting. Not just a hobby, not just like you golfed the municipal course, but you're actually playing with some of the big players in that space, which is super exciting to see. By the way, for those that are listening to this, we will put DJ Marc Rousso's Instagram handle and maybe a link to a couple of his clips, just to give people a sense for some of the work that he's been doing. But super cool. Marc, I want to talk real quickly about just life in general, because you are, most people have one business and they are overwhelmed by just having that one business and how it sort of runs their life versus them running it. And, in addition to that, you're a DJ, you've got your family, of course, and you're investing a lot in your education. There's just so much going on. So like, how do you prioritize this all, or how do you balance it all? How do you make sure that your life isn't driving you, but you're actually driving your life?
A great question. I mean, you are probably one of the best interviewers that I've ever heard or been a part of. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. So I've heard I heard when you interview Patrick Leonis and these amazing people, and so I feel you ask amazing questions that you have. You're definitely very skilled at this. So the balancing for me is living a perfect day. Like, what I think of is a perfect day every single day, and it has taken 30 years to make this happen. And it is a formula that I have used. And it's fostering eight equities of my life. 8 equities are family, physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, career, and relationship. And so relationship is your relationship with your significant other, your spouse. Your family is your wife, your kids, your parents. Your physical is your physical health, your family physical. Your financial is the money that you have. Family physical, financial, mental is what are you learning on an ongoing basis. Spiritual is how you believe in the God. Family, physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, like who you're interacting with as friends. Because sometimes we could go a long time without seeing our friends because we're busy. Family, physical, financial, mental, social, career. Where do you want to see yourself in 1, 3, 5 years in your career? And the last one is relationship. And so I have set every year on my goal, every year on my birthday, I would either take a ferry boat ride or I'd go up to Snoqualmie Falls, and I would ask myself two questions. What am I most dissatisfied with in my X period of X life? And those are the 8 equities that you put in. And if life were perfect, in and then you could in my X period of life, in Y timeline, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, what would it look like? And so when I'm, like today, I'm 50 years old, or like every 30, 40, 50, I do my 10-year jaunt of like, basically write myself a letter, write myself, a vision board or a vision of what my 10 years is going to look like by the time it's going to be when I'm going to be 60. And so I'm like, okay, my kids are going to be 24 and 23. They're going to be out of the house. We're going to be empty nesters. I want to travel. So I start mapping out what it is that I want out of my life and in all of those areas. And then I revert it backwards to 1 year and 1 month, and then just daily or weekly goals. And now I just live, and my priority is being an amazing dad. Like, so I always want to so my priority is always being an amazing dad. So I say, if life were perfect, I would spend time with my kids. Since they were 6 years old, they're 14 and 16 now. Since they were 6 years old, I would take each of my kid on a yearly trip for 3 days, and we go and do things that they would want to do, and they're surprise trips. They started off like my kid taking my son to sporting events. My daughter, we would go to zoos because she loved going to the zoos. So we went to the St. Louis Zoo 1 year. We went to the Omaha, Nebraska Zoo. I mean, Omaha. Who goes to know Omaha? But they have one of the best zoos in the world. Same with St. Louis, and then San Diego. And then with my daughter, we would go to concerts. We go to Ariana Grande in Portland. We go to Billboard Music Awards in Las Vegas, and that would be our thing. My son, and we just got back from New York, and going to see shows in great restaurants. With my son, it would be all about sports. We went to, Husky games, Seahawk games, Mariner games, all across the country. We went to London to see a Seahawk game. We recently went to LA and went to a Clippers game and went to a Lakers game and went to see NASCAR. And so it's just like that those one-on-one times. And I'll even get deeper is my best friend passed away when he was 43 years old, Joey. And the thing he said to me was, I just wish I had more time to spend with my kids.
Yeah.
And I think about that, and I was like, every year that goes by, I just want my kids to, if I pass away today, to knock on wood, I don't, my kids will have had that last trip that they did with me. And like, I don't want them to ever think that, I want them to always remember like the good times and like those fun things that we did together. And, it's 3 days out of my life every single year with each kid, but that has been a priority, in addition to all the other, tons of other things, not just the trips. And then it's my wife. Like, how am I an amazing husband, to my wife, and how do I live in that intentionally every single, so it's, going on trips with her, 2 to 3 times a year, just the two of us, and giving her that one-on-one time because she needs it. And the wives need their own bucket because, it's like, okay, what about date night? Or what about, bringing flowers just because for the heck of it, or things that I think that she would appreciate as a partner of mine. And it like about last month, it was our anniversary. And, I seem to get a lot of, I as a CEO of a company that builds luxury homes, as a DJ, like I get a little bit of notoriety, or I get a little bit of like people like, oh my God, Mark, it's amazing what you're doing. And so the selfless act on my anniversary was that I basically gave all of the credit to my wife, because during during the recession, she supported us. During, like, I was massively depressed and she was there to comfort me. And I mean, there's 1,000 things that she's done over the course of our relationship. And I, I put it out there into the Facebook world so that people would give her credit, and deflect the credit of what would come to me and give it all to her. And so those are two really deep messages about one of the two of the 8 equities of life. And but I live my life based on, okay, what am I going to do this week for my wife? What am I going to do this week for my kids? Okay, what am I going to do from a physical perspective? What am I going to do from a mental perspective, my social perspective? Like, what friends am I going to hang out with? And it's all from a 1-year goal, 3-year goal, 10-year goal. And I live my life based on those intentions.
Wow. I was going to say, you said it right there, intentionality. I think that's when you've got so many things going on, and you don't have to be an entrepreneur for that to be the case, but I mean, just so many things going on. The intentionality is so important because the world will always take all of your time, any of your excess time. It's the same thing with finances, right? Your expenses will always meet your income if you're not really intentional about that. And I love that. I wrote it down: family, physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, career, and relationship. And the funny thing is, earlier on one of our shows, we had Lex Sisney, who's the founder of organizational physics, and he teaches companies to look at entropy within their organization as a starting point for annual planning. And entropy is just, where's their drains in the system? Or to your point, where are you dissatisfied, and what would it look like if you were really satisfied in that situation? So very similar sort of perspective in terms of how you would turn something within a business or your personal life into a forward-looking goal where you can gain some personal momentum. I actually, Marc, I'd love to have you come back and talk a little bit about these concepts further, because I do think it's a really important concept for our listeners to sort of get behind. And that is that, we got to either take ownership of our life or our life will take ownership of us. So, a last question though for you, because I know we're getting short on time. The whole podcast here is built around this concept of being borderless. And I've actually heard some really great examples throughout our conversation of places where you're sort of breaking conventional thinking. And I would just love to hear if there's any place where you feel like you're sort of doing things differently than most people do, and where you're sort of, breaking that mold and becoming borderless per se, in an aspect of your life that's helping you sort of live or lead differently.
I think that really it boils down to those two things that I've already mentioned, is living like borderless. Borderless to me as a leader means like it's just being about humility and humbleness, and being selfless, and giving others the credit, giving others the opportunity to lead. And that's the way that I lead JMarc, is that I let other people kind of take the charge, take the lead, make decisions, and I'm just there for guidance and vision and inspiration. And so that's one aspect that I think is borderless or selfless. And then, and then I just think that, like, living a life that anything is possible. Those 8 equities of life. I'll give you one example, and this was truly borderless, is that in 2010, I had no paycheck and I was massively depressed. And yet it was 2010, it was my birthday. And I went and I wrote goals for what I wanted the next 10 years to look like. And in my goals under family, I said, I want to live abroad for 1 year in France. And so that was borderless. And it was just a time, I had no business writing that down, like in the state of mentality that I was currently in. But of tradition, So 2020 came and we hadn't accomplished it. I wasn't able to have taken a year away and go to France. But I was walking with my wife and she's like, this is like early in the pandemic, May of 2020. And she said, if the pandemic is going to happen and the kids are going to be in school, like the kids are going to be on online school, I don't want to be in Seattle. And I was like, okay, well, where do you want to go? She's like, what if we can get to Europe? So my wife and kids all have Canadian passports and I don't. And so I was like, okay, well, let me see how I can make that work. My mom was born and raised in France. And so I wrote to the French consulate and I said, hey, can I, I'd like to get my mom's birth certificate for the ability to travel. So they wrote me back and they didn't send me my mom's birth certificate. They sent me my birth certificate. My mom registered my sister and I for having French citizenship in 1980. And so I was able to take that birth certificate, set up an appointment in San Francisco to get a passport. And within June 1st, about the end of May to the end of August, it took me 90 days to apply and get a passport. We then, 45 days later, we were on a plane and we planned out 6 months a trip to go travel around the world during the pandemic. Our first stop was in Crete in Greece. And we did that for a month. The next stop was we spent 3.5 months in Cape Town. We spent a few weeks back in Athens, and then we spent a month in Zermatt with my kids skiing. And that all stemmed from a 10-year goal of wanting to go to France. And it took massive, massive, massive effort to make that all happen. There's a ton of things that had to, orchestrate in order for it to transpire. But it was like living a life of what's possible. And being borderless or being open to the possibility of great, of amazing things happening. And I think that it starts with vision. It starts with a dream. And many of the people that are on this call all have dreams, and they're living their dreams in one way, shape, form, or another. And I think it's how do you continue to dream bigger? And how do you continue to expand on the dreams that you have so that you're living a life with intention and you're living a borderless life?
That's awesome. All right. Well, we've been talking to Marc Rousso, the CEO of J. Marc Homes. Marc, where can people learn more about you?
You can follow me as a DJ at DJ Marc Rousso, MarcRousso. You can follow me on Spotify, and then J. Marc Homes, JayMarc Homes.com. And if ever in Seattle, you feel free to look me up, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat with anyone anytime.
Awesome. Well, we'll post the contact information in the show notes so people know where to find you. And again, I'll have you back on to talk about the 8 equities of life. I love that. Thanks for being on the show, Marc.
All right. I love it. Thanks, David.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.